Welcome to Season 2 of the Shooters Only podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Cadiz, alongside co-hosts
Darren Jung
and Garrick Garcia. We'll bring you the latest NBA news and hottest basketball takes every single week. Fantasy sports, NFL, the MLB, we'll sprinkle that in for you too. No matter the sport, we have the data to back up our opinions. And like my boy Klay Thompson says,
shooters keep shooting.
Hope you enjoy the episode. Welcome to Season 2 of the Shooters Only podcast. Hope you enjoyed that new intro, and make sure to follow us on Shooters Only podcast on Instagram. Brandon Cadiz here alongside Darren Jung and Garrick Garcia. Happy New Year, guys. How was your New Year's celebration from home? And let us know how you're doing here and what you're excited about for Season 2 of our podcast.
Yes, Happy New Year's, boys. The sad part is 2021 it's feeling a lot like 2020. Kind of like a Markieff and Marcus Morris situation, you know what I mean, right now. It feels a lot of the same right now.
The disrespect. So are we saying Marcus Morris, he's the big budget guy, he's the 2020s, that, the twin superstar, so to speak, but on that minimum contract, that's what 2021 is right now. That's Markieff Morris. I don't know.
Because we have such
maybe
low expectations for 2021. That's Markieff Morris. He can only exceed expectations.
That's fair. I feel like my 2021 so far, it's been pretty good for the most part. Just been trying to get healthy, get in shape, stick to my New Year's resolutions, and, hopefully talk some good basketball storylines that we got coming up for you guys.
All good to hear, boys. And to our viewers, thanks for sticking with us. Season 2 is about to bring you all some greater things. We're trying to start a new YouTube channel again. I'm trying to work with some graphics and eventually try to make this a live show in 2021. But we'll jump right into it, recapping week 2 of the NBA and talking about week 3 so far. That's been going on. But I think the biggest news in the NBA right now was Adam Silver talking about the possible expansion of the NBA. Seattle fans rejoice because the Supersonics could be coming back to Seattle in about 3 years. That's my prediction, at least. And because 2 teams are available for bidding on the board, each team will have to bid $2.5 billion, that's with a B, $billion, to acquire a new NBA franchise.
I love that idea of Seattle, Brandon. I mean, we know our guy Bezos. He comes from Seattle. And I think right now with the public, he's not the most popular guy in the world. But if you bring basketball back to Seattle, your approval ratings it can only go up, right?
Yeah, and Seattle's a pretty –
Even if he's trying to take over the world.
Oh, no. Seattle's a pretty rapid growing sports franchise too, just in the sense that they have a lot of sports teams there now. And, the Mariners look like they're going to get better hopefully soon. They got a lot of young prospects. I believe Kyle Lewis is doing pretty well for them right now. So there's some things to be excited about. And besides that, they just have a rich and deep basketball culture, obviously. I know the other city that Brandon was talking about just off air was Las Vegas a little bit. I think that could be interesting just because you have the Golden Knights who just came there a few years ago. They made the playoffs their first year for hockey. And then obviously the Raiders, it looked like they could have made the playoffs because they were the only team that, knocked down the Chiefs a peg, but they haven't really superseded those expectations.
Of the WNBA.
Vegas Aces, yeah.
Too.
They got some squads out there.
Yeah, I think the other cities that were talked about too were Mexico City and Kansas City. I really just want the Seattle franchise to be back there. I don't really care about where the second team goes. It would be nice, as I mentioned off air, to go international a little further out, but like Garrick mentioned off air, to me, it's a great point that travel has to be in consideration as well. The next little issue here for the NBA is that they'd have to have one team in the East and one team in the West, as both teams can't be in the Western Conference or else they'll have an imbalance of that. And some teams that were talked about moving to the Eastern Conference where the Memphis Grizzlies, Minnesota Timberwolves, or the New Orleans Pelicans, if one or both of these two expansion teams happen.
Yeah, I didn't get it. I don't think I got an A+ in geography, but those cities, from what I remember, they're kind of in the middle, right? The middle. So you could definitely stretch that and put them in the West, because I'd love to see a team in Las Vegas. I think, as we've seen with James Harden, it would be a free agent destination for sure, with all the clubs and party life once the pandemic's over.
That's big facts. We know little baby's going to be there. Travis Scott on our polls is going to be there. And there could be some Vegas rappers possibly popping up if we're looking at the SoundCloud scene. So it should just be an exciting time. But something I also want to get into as far as the expansion would just be that draft, because we know, I'm pretty sure it's 8 guys are protected if I'm still on my GM, my league days, if we're going, full 2021 here. 2K21, shout out, Ronnie, come on the podcast if you want to. But I think there's just going to be a sense of who are those guys who are going to be up for grabs. I think, honestly, a funny name that I could think of right off the top of my head is Malik Monk, just because he hasn't gotten a lot of shine down there for Charlotte in a while. And, he's still
put him on the billboard. Put him on the billboard for the Seattle franchise.
Yeah, I mean, who's the guy I'm looking towards? I'm thinking Marvin Bagley Jr. The third, excuse me. We talked a little about him, and how De'Aaron Fox's father on Twitter, Aaron Fox, didn't seem like he wanted them there. So could he be another guy that's possibly not protected and, maybe is a top free agent, so to speak, in this redraft?
That's wild to think about.
It would make for a great podcast, Garrick. I'm looking up some things online of who different teams are protected. It's pretty wild.
Malik Beasley? I don't know if you're getting protected, brother.
The interesting thing is, will teams not protect guys that have really bad contracts? So maybe a Russell Westbrook or
what? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
John Wall, one of those albatross contracts.
I think those guys are still too good to drop, though, because John Wall, to his credit, has seemed to have somewhat of a resurgence himself at times. Just some of these games that he's been putting up lately, he looks like he's still that all-star guy, I think. But yeah, it's interesting to think about, because it's Daniel House. Is he up on the market, honestly? Because, just guys who might get in trouble every now and then, too, who might be solid quality players. So I think that's something that we're going to have to look forward to if Adam Silver's really going to take this to the next level.
So the main reason for this happening is, of course, with the NBA losing money because of the coronavirus pandemic. And with that $5 billion just to bid on that team, it could go higher, or $5 billion total, $2.5 billion for each team. The great thing about this is that each franchise will get approximately $166 million to whatever way they want to use it for. So I don't know if that includes the salary cap, but if you're going to add that to your team with these two expansion teams, it's about to be a lit first year with those teams being in the association.
Yeah, I mean, the more the better, right? I mean, it might dilute the talent pool in the league a little bit, but that might actually be a good thing now with the NBA, because I think unlike the 1990s where expansion really kind of ruined the competitiveness of the league, there's just a lot more good players now. There's just more talent, I think, in the NBA.
And we've seen the G League expand too. So just with the Ignite and new G League teams, possibly that could be something just fostering even more talent.
I want to give a trivia point to Garrick here, because he answered that correctly. It's 8 players that you can protect. So shout out to your GM days in 2K.
Got to do it for Ronnie, man. Need that sponsorship, Ronnie.
We'll move on to our players of the week for week 2 in the NBA. In the Eastern Conference, it was Tobias Harris. And in the Western Conference, it was Stephen Curry. The Philadelphia 76ers posted a 3-0 week as Tobias Harris averaged 23, 9.7 rebounds, and 4 assists per game. And Tobias Harris having a strong start to the season, and the Sixers with the best record in the NBA.
It's great to see Tobias Harris playing so well. It seems like, from what I remember, back in the Clippers days with Doc Rivers is when he was really playing his best basketball, and it seems like him and Doc really just knows how to utilize Tobias to his best of his abilities, and He's still not worth that contract, but it's good to see him playing well.
Yeah, J. Cole looks great. I mean, when he was playing, up there in Charlotte in his hometown. I mean, Tobias Harris, excuse me. He looks great. And I think it's just all that elevation that we've been giving him lately. A lot of people have been giving him flack. Some of the other players we're going to get into, they were hearing it a lot from the media because of their contracts, because they had, not really come up to expectations or because of injuries in the past year. And he looks like a guy that I wouldn't say is worth the money, but at least he's playing to the level we know he can be at, which is kind of that borderline all-star level. And I think he's actually helping out Ben Simmons quite a lot because he seems to be struggling from time to time, at least when I've watched him and I've watched taped on him recently. And this is coming from a guy who's a huge Ben Simmons fan. So I'm excited to see it. And Joel Embiid himself also looks like, I think Darren mentioned on previous podcasts, a possible MVP candidate right now, the way he's balling out.
It's amazing what having a couple shooters around your star players can do for a team. Who would have known,
Yeah.
Elton Brand? Who would have known?
I mean, Seth Curry, one of the most premier shooters, and then Danny Green, a great 3-and-D when he's on. So a lot of help, obviously, for those guys now.
Exciting to see Tobias Harris finally, start to figure out his shot. In those early days there with Vooch down in Orlando, a little bit of a shooting issue there, but now here as a veteran, looking promising. We move on to the Western Conference Player of the Week, Stephen Curry, career-high 62-point game against Portland, and the Warriors posted a 2-1 record for Week 2.
He's back. I mean, I saw a lot of slander on Twitter. I've always been, kind of a Steph hater, but I always knew he was going to have a really big year this year. And I think we were all kind of just waiting on the one season Steph's going to have to carry a team. It kind of got pushed back because of last year because of injuries. So, I mean, this is kind of a big year for Steph. Wouldn't you guys say, even though they don't really have a chance at the title, it's kind of a big year for just like his legacy and how like the public views him?
I would say so, because obviously the Steph slander is at all-time highs. I think 2016, obviously his campaign, what he did there was monumental just because he was the first unanimous MVP ever, obviously. So in that sense, there was a lot of pressure on him. We'd kind of deemed him as the best player in the world for a while, the same way we did with Kawhi when he was coming off his championship. And right before that championship played out, obviously with LeBron in 2016, we were kind of saying he had surpassed LeBron, or somebody who's that great of a shooter, in the game of basketball just has to be the best player, right? So in that sense, for him to go down and out and then for KD to come, and it's kind of like we don't really know where to put him now at times because we look at KD and we'll say, well, he was the best player on the team, but Steph was the leader. So I think this is going to be huge for Steph because the argument has always been, Russell Westbrook has a higher ceiling as far as if he carries your team because he's going to get you to the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Right now it's not looking that way, but we'll see.
Westbrook's the floor raiser, and I think Curry's
Yeah.
the ceiling raiser for a great team.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's the conversation we have. And, if he gets them the 6th seed this year in the West or something like that, I think you're going to have to talk about him maybe more so in that top 10 than I'm comfortable right now saying. So
As a Warriors fan, it's great to see him back, but as a Warriors fan, even more to greater level, I think as Darren has mentioned with his tweets and talking off of air, that Draymond Green has really clicked this Warriors offense to a whole different level. And he's had Kelly Oubre Jr. and Andrew Wiggins actually showing up. Warriors currently 2-1 with Draymond Green back. And it just looks like a completely different offense. Big game tonight against the LA Clippers. And if the Warriors can get it done against the Clippers, just look out. I think they could shock some teams if they get the Clippers tonight.
I'm
to your point, Brandon,
I'm a closet Clippers fan, Brandon, so watch what you're saying.
No, I was just going to say to Brandon's point, I believe when I was looking just at some advanced stats earlier for the teams, the Clippers are top 5 worst rebounding teams, but they're great at shooting. So I think James Wiseman, he could have a big night, honestly, tonight. That's all I'm going to say. And he's looked great himself. So
just to circle
he's
back
somebody to be excited about.
Just to circle back to Draymond, it's no coincidence Steph had his 3 best games of the season right when Draymond came back. This guy, I think he just totally unlocked the offense, and especially on the defense. He looks like the Draymond of old. And that 12.5% field goal percentage, it could only go up. It can only go up, hopefully, for my fantasy team.
And thank God for Kelly Oubre. His three's back. He went 4 for 6 last game from beyond the arc. And fun fact to all you Andrew Wiggins haters, Andrew Wiggins this season, guarding any player, their opponents have shot 5% lower than their total field goal percentage. But we got to move on now and talk about a couple of games last night. A couple of guys that were actually on our fantasy teams, Dame Lillard versus Zach LaVine. Crazy great game last night. Went down to the wire. Zach LaVine basically with a game-winning three. Blazers had a chance to tie it. Ultimately didn't fall down with a Carmelo Anthony attempt to tie the game. But Zach LaVine and Kobe White.
The Sweet Life of Zach and Cody.
Looked to be a problem last night against this Portland team that seems to be struggling.
Brandon, we'll talk about this game, but me and Garrett cannot let you get away with another Andrew Wiggins prop-up job that you just pulled off right then and there. That man does not know how to play basketball. I don't know. I don't care what his statistics are.
Okay, Andrew Wiggins is back, guys. That's all I'm saying. But come on, we got to talk about this game.
Go ahead, Garrick. It's all you. This is all you.
Yeah, I mean, Zach LaVine, I was thinking about it earlier today. Is he possibly a top 30 player right now, or is that just way too high of praise? Because I know we kind of put him in that 40, 45 range, kind of with guys like D'Lo. D'Lo hasn't looked that great to come out. And Zach LaVine, I feel like he's been progressing and progressing. Yeah, he's a sniper from 3, 23, 4, and 4 when I'm looking at the season averages right here. So obviously just an elite scorer, can just get a bucket anywhere. And we knew he had that game against the Hornets last year where I believe he had 12 or 13 threes and he just went nuclear. And I'm also just looking at the team stats again for the Bulls, and they're a top 10 offense as far as the points that they can score per game. So I don't know, with guys like Kobe White, Lauri Markkanen seems to have somewhat of a resurgence, and Otto Porter Jr., to his credit, Wilt Chamberlain III down there, he's been putting up some buckets on and off the court. So I got to give them some credit. I think their defense is still extremely suspect, but with Zach LaVine heading that offense, maybe he'll be an all-star this year. Who knows?
Hold on. Wilt Chamberlain. Did I just hear Wilt Chamberlain III? We got to dissect that a little bit with our guy Wendell Carter.
We're gonna insert that meme here in post editing with the Otto Porter Wilt joke.
Shout out Mike Corsemba.
Could Otto Porter Jr. be the grandson of a Wilt Chamberlain?
I mean, also shout out to Patrick Williams too. He's playing well for a guy we all thought was going to be a project, but he's shooting 47% from 3 already and playing stellar defense. So that looks like a home run pick by their new GM from Denver.
Okay, we gotta move on to the Nets last night, and boy, what a great job there of Steve Nash to finally start Jarrett Allen over DeAndre Jordan. Completely changed the lineup with KD out yesterday, and the chemistry between Kyrie and Jarrett Allen just looked amazing. TLC, Timothy Luwawu-Cabarrot went to the bench. Bruce Bowen got the start last night, and everything was clicking there. They took down Utah. Donovan Mitchell continues to struggle, shooting both under 40% on field goals overall and three-point percentage. And the Nets took care of business. And a monster game, 19 points, 18 boards for Jarrett Allen against Rudy Gobert.
Yeah, I was kind of disappointed. I hyped up the Jazz, I think, last podcast as a team I thought was the third best team in the West. So it was kind of disappointing, but it is early in the season, so I'll give them the benefit of the doubt.
You guys lose this game, or did the Jazz win this one?
As for Jarrett Allen, I mean, me and Garrick have been pounding our desks about this the last 2 years. He's just a better version of DeAndre Jordan at this point, as a rim running big that could play defense. So I think it was great for Steve Nash to finally get DeAndre to kind of sacrifice and go to the bench.
I'm going to go a little off topic for a second. Call me Garrick Team Stats Garcia today because I'm just bringing out all the team stats for you guys. I said the Atlanta Hawks in a 7-game series would beat the Jazz. Here's why. The Jazz are the best rebounding team in the NBA. And Jarrett Allen just scooped 18 boards over this man, Rudy Gobert, 2-time Defensive Player of the Year. And on top of that,
The Hawks
They're
that
the
just lost
second
to the
worst
Knicks
passing
yesterday?
team.
Those same Hawks?
They're the second worst passing
Those
team
same
in the
Hawks games
NBA.
that lost to the Knicks?
21.9 assists. Who's
We
the
only
primary
bring
playmaker on this
facts.
team?
We only bring facts to back up our opinions. Shooters Only podcast on Instagram.
That's what I'm saying. I don't know who the guy is who's going to initiate the offense, honestly, right now, because I think Donovan Mitchell, he's a great scorer, but he's not Trae Young. He's not that playmaker. Mike Conley, he's a little past his prime. He can still have really good games, but he's not the Mike Conley of old that we loved in Memphis. And Joe Ingles is an extremely smart player, but he's been struggling from three. And even his offense looks somewhat limited as far as his playmaking ability. And we're not passing it down to Rudy Gobert to create out the post the way we would be with Jokic. So I don't know who's going to get this offense going, but I'm looking at Donovan Mitchell. If you're really top 20, I need you to look like you're top 20 out there. That's all I'm saying.
Come on, Garrick. It's been 7 games. Don't overreact. Donovan Mitchell is like 22 years old still. He's going to be fine.
He's like 26 on a good day. He's got the thon maker 22-year-old.
He's going to be fine. The
birth
Jazz are going to
certificate.
make the playoffs. It's just what they do.
We're gonna talk about struggling too. Yesterday, no one had their shot for that team. Bojan Bogdanovic 2 for 7. Mike Conley 3 for 10. Rudy Gobert 3 for 10. Off the bench, the 6th man Jordan Clarkson 5 of 13, and nothing was going for them. And hey, it's the Nets, right? You just got to give them a pass, right? The Nets are one of the better teams in the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, it's just any given night in the NBA, you could get blown out by anyone. I mean, especially with this regular season, we've seen a lot of weird games, like the one I just referenced, the Knicks and the Hawks, with the Knicks kind of dominated that whole entire game. So this is just gonna be a weird season, I think.
Yeah.
But a 30-piece though, that can feed a family of 6 right there.
I misspoke earlier and said Bruce Bowen, not the retired player. Bruce Brown is who Steve Nash started yesterday, and he's going to be a guy that I'm going to put on my waiver wire streamer pickups. He went 3 for 5 last night. He had 6 rebounds and 5 assists. So if you need a guy with Kevin Durant out with the next 4 games, 3 games now from including yesterday's game because he was a close contact with someone that had COVID. So Nets are looking good still with Kyrie Irving leading the way.
Yeah, Nets are scary.
The way the media hypes them up, you think they'd be undefeated, but they're 4-4.
Yeah, so
whoa.
We're gonna move on to the San Antonio Spurs game last night, and it was a good one, and I'll tell you why. Because unfortunately for Darren, again, we'll mention some injuries here. Derek White suffered a second toe fracture in his left foot. He's a drop in fantasy leagues. Darius Garland is out for the next week with a shoulder strain, as well as Killian Hayes with a hip injury. So he'll be reevaluated for some time soon. Alec Burks is out now on a walking boot. He'll be reevaluated in a couple of weeks. The ankle sprain looks to be bad there. So look out for those teams and some streamers for them. But back over to the San Antonio Spurs, out shooting the LA Clippers last night. And thanks to Gale's legend, Patty Mills, off the bench, 27 points, career high, 8 3-pointers, and tied the Spurs franchise record last night, I think, for the team with 20 total made threes as a team.
This might be the peak of the Spurs season right here. This is the rafter game. This is the one where you put the banner in the rafter.
This is disrespectful.
They
have 5 rings, 5 more rings than the Clippers. I don't want to hear this now.
I've been pro tank for the Spurs for a long time, and I think definitely Cade Cunningham would be a great fit for them. And I think the most interesting thing with this team is where is LaMarcus Aldridge and DeMar DeRozan? Where are they going? Because I think they're both getting traded before the deadline. And both those guys, I think, can help a lot of teams because they're both really good players.
I agree. I mean, DeMar DeRozan, I remember I came up with a little Magic trade for him last year, but the Magic, the way they're flying high right now, they don't think they need him because they're on their way to get that Mickey Mouse ring in Orlando.
The juggernaut Orlando Magic.
Exactly. That's what I'm talking about. And I don't know where – I think LaMarcus Aldridge now is a center. Obviously, he's slow-footed now, more so than he would have been in his past. He's always been a little slow, but he's a great shooter, and he can stretch the floor for you at any given time. So I think obviously that's something that any team would want. And he's still 6'10", 6'11", so he's big enough to sometimes, really give people trouble at the rim. So in that sense, I could totally see somebody who has some money or is just trying to up their team a little bit right before the playoffs could make a trade for him. And I'm taking assets, obviously, if I'm the Spurs, because I need those young guys coming in. And a surprise pick as far as players that they have so far, who I totally forgot was in the NBA for the last 2 to 3 weeks, is Keldon Johnson. It's disrespectful, he was one of those blue blood guys, came out of a big college, but he's a guy who's been performing, and he's been getting a lot of rebounds at the small forward position. So if you can make a trade for him or pick him up, so that's something I would like to say about him.
Can I throw out the Nets as maybe a candidate for a guy LaMarcus Aldridge if they want? Because they do have DeAndre and Jared Allen, but they don't really have that stretch five as of yet. And if you could get him for the cheap, I think that'd be a great addition for the Nets. Just to have even more firepower on offense.
Would you do that for Karras, or you're not doing that?
No, I'm not doing that for Karras, though. He's a little old.
Absolutely not.
Long in the tooth.
Nope.
Because I think that's what you would have to give up, honestly. Like, if I'm San Antonio, that's what I'm asking for if I'm on the phone.
Yeah, you start with Karras,
Pop
and then
is
you
playing
work down
hardball
from there.
And then you work down to, like, Rodney Karooks and Zana Musa. Because you need that foreign influence.
Nick Claxton, maybe.
Yeah, he's in the G League right now.
We don't like to see him go, but he's a promising young player.
I want to mention y'all's Los Angeles Lakers last night because Anthony Davis and LeBron James closed it out. They had a big lead, ultimately came down to the wire against the Memphis Grizzlies. And just great games there by LeBron and AD. With KCP out, we saw more minutes in the starting lineup for Kyle Kuzma, as well in the past 2 games, 20-plus minutes for Talen Horton-Tucker.
THT, man. He's out there. He's a triple single kind of guy right now, but that's okay, honestly. I compared him to PJ Tucker. That's what some of the draft comparisons said. But he gives me a little bit of that Markelle Fultz vibe, and not in the sense that they're going to be the same player, because I don't want to disrespect Markelle Fultz right now, because he's looking pretty good so far. But just as far as how he's able to get into the paint, bump people, and get those and-one type layups, he's an energizer. And I think he's going to be somebody who could really help the Lakers definitely in a deep playoff run, which is what they're trying to do, obviously.
LeBron and AD with 26 points apiece, 12 rebounds for LBJ and for AD, 10 rebounds. Dennis Schroeder, again, took 15 shots, 5 of 15. I just want to ask this personally to Darren. Are we still mad at Dennis Schroeder's start to the season? Or are we a little bit more happier since that first game?
No, Garrett, you and Garrett convinced me. They're going to need Dennis Schroeder this season in my opinion, just to take a load off of LeBron as being one of the main playmakers on the team. I think it's going to be key for LeBron to sit out. I think personally, as a Lakers fan, he should be sitting out maybe half the games this regular season. And if that were to happen, you need another guy that can at least handle the ball a little bit, and that'd be Dennis Schroeder.
Yeah.
I want everybody to take a second here. Just open your third eye for me, all the fans. Everybody listening, all 3 of you. So what Darren Jung just proposed is that he does not want LeBron James chasing Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's all-time scoring record. So basically, he's trying to denounce
the sixth ring.
He's trying to denounce him from the GOAT conversation. We need all the stats, LeBron, that you can get us. We need everything. I need that jersey value going up. I need you to buy the city of Cleveland by the time
if he goes down with a groin injury, goes down with the groin injury, just remember what Garrick said.
Knock on wood, that doesn't happen. He spends $1 million on his body every year. Pause, but in that sense, I think he's going to be all right. I hope so.
Yes, sir.
Shout out Kyle Anderson, though. Slow-mo's been kind of balling lately. This is disrespectful. He's not Armstrong in the Tour de France.
But going back to the game, it was this is way too close for a Grizzlies team that doesn't have their 3 best players. But I don't think the Lakers they're just not that very focused this season, it seems like. But I mean, they're still 6-2, so what can we say?
Yeah, they're the top team in the West, so I think they're just coasting, obviously, as LeBron has done in the past.
I want to mention some other notable performances from the league last night. Again, Donovan Mitchell with those 30 points, 50% shooting last night. D'Angelo Russell last night for the Timberwolves with 30 points as well. He got to the line for 10 times, and he had 11 assists or more last night. So encouraging to see there for Minnesota. Let's see. Again, Kyle Kuzma for your fantasy owners has seen some more minutes because of KCP's injury. And last night, it's an explosion last night, a breakout because Naz Reid was in foul trouble yesterday too. And that's Juancho Hernagomez putting up 25 points, 5 for 8 from 3 yesterday. He's someone to just keep there on the radar in case Naz Reid gets in foul trouble, but he's not someone I would rush out to go pick up immediately. And Bismack Biyombo, Royce O'Neal are some guys that I'd like to pick up on the waiver wire right now. And also, another guy that's pretty interesting, I would have to say, I mentioned him last episode, a star in Argentina, is Facundo Campazzo. He's seen 20-plus minutes in each of the past 2 games, I think. He's only had 2 assists in each of those games, but he's a playmaker. Those assists are eventually going to go up, so if you need someone to stream, those are some guys that you should be looking out on your waiver wire for your fantasy basketball leagues. That's a perfect transition to talk about some players that have surprised and have disappointed this season. And they might be some guys that you could maybe buy low or sell high currently if you're playing fantasy basketball.
I think Garrick's got a really good one.
I'm sorry. We were talking about Charlotte. We were singing J. Cole's praises earlier. You know, some great albums that came out of him. But Devontae Graham lately, what have you done for me lately, Devontae? I'm mad at you as a fantasy owner. I know you don't know me. We're not friends. I understand. You have your own family. I have mine. But you've been letting me down, man. Those assists, they've been solid, but he's only averaging, I think, 11 points right now and about 6.6 assists. So for him to be doing that, and, you know, we saw that burst that he had last year, 17 points, 7 assists, and his three-point shot looked kind of iffy at times, but sometimes when he got hot, it looked like you couldn't stop him. And on the other side of that, Terry Rozier has been just going off. I mean, this man is a man on a mission. I was kind of a detractor. I was more of a Dennis Schroeder guy when it came to top-tier, you know, backup guys to bottom-tier best starting point guards in the league a few years ago, and he was one of those guys in that candidacy, if you will. But Terry Rozier's looked like a man on a mission lately, and that $17 million he's getting, that's well-earned. And I think Michael Jordan is pretty happy about that. And, heck, you might even want to get him as a Jordan Brand representative at this point, Mike, because this guy's balling out. He needs to ball out in those shoes, too.
The Terry Rozier signature collection. Those are going to fly off the shelf.
They're probably bigger than the Triple Bs. That's why Lamelo switched to Puma.
So is Terry Rozier, the way he's playing, is he a trade deadline target for a team that maybe needs a point guard? Like a team like Philly? I think you have to seriously think about that if you need a playmaking point guard.
And rumblings of the Clippers, too. I don't know if you want to get into that, Darren, because I think that's also very interesting.
Yeah, I think that also, maybe like a little Lou Will and picks or something. They don't even have any picks to give anymore. But if any team could get Terry Rozier, the way he's playing this season, it might be a big boost come playoff time.
I agree.
Yeah. I want to mention one guy that has been surprising this season, took his game to another different level, and he's been doing it every single year, just improving. And he's probably the best player now on this team, where we thought Pascal Siakam or OG Anunoby were going to step up again, but it's been the amazing Fred VanVleet. 21 points this season, 5.5 rebounds and assists, a steal, 1.5 steals per game, and a career high in both rebounds and field goal percentage. I saw Fred VanVleet as having a good season again, but he's having career highs in those 2 categories. And at this Toronto team that's struggling to buy wins, he's looking like the best player.
What it do, baby?
Yeah,
He got paid and he kept on performing. Most guys after that contract year, they kind of fall off. But it's good to see Fred VanVleet playing well. I'm a little concerned about the Raptors, though, the way they've been playing this season. I've kind of expected more from OG and Pascal, personally, especially Pascal. I think the way he played last year, he was awesome in the regular season, and I kind of thought the bubble was an aberration and he'd get back to that same player. But I don't know, the league might have figured him out a little bit or something. They might have they have the scouting report on that unstoppable spin move now.
Yeah, I want to ask you guys something really quick before we might take a pause. But just as far as you guys think it's just a team filled with like second guys, second stars? Because that's kind of how it feels to me.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's why
obviously they had
I've
Kawhi.
been on the bandwagon of they need to go out and get James Harden. If you could keep one of Pascal and OG and go get James Harden, I think you do that 10 times out of 10 if you're Masai Ujiri.
Yeah, that's. I mean, he might be bigger than Drake and Justin Bieber if they dropped a mixtape collab at that point, honestly, because that would just be iconic. So that maple
Because
flag is going to be
you're
flying
one in
high.
five right now. I mean, I'm gonna give it a couple extra games, but that's a little concerning to me.
Yeah, because I'm looking at the depth chart, right? You got Malachi Flynn, Norman Powell, Stanley Johnson to back up your starters. That's not looking too hot, you know?
You know what it was? They didn't keep my boy, my league legend, Rondé Hollis Jefferson. That boy can strap up, man. He's an extra defender at all times. He's basically Derek Jones Jr. That's all I'm saying. Deep takes,
I
deep
just
cuts,
want
we
more
out
from.
here.
You guys know I'm the biggest OG fan in the world, and I'm just expecting more for him this season. He's only shooting 25% from three. He's getting all the opportunity in the world, and
Yeah.
after you get paid like that in the off season, I'm just a little disappointed in the way he's played as well.
I want to run down a list of a few more players that I think have broken out this season, and he has to be the winner this year for biggest breakout, and that's Julius Randle. He's putting up Nikola Jokic type numbers and Domantas Sabonis type numbers. 22 points per game, 11 rebounds, 7.4 assists per game, and zero point 0.7 steals per game. I mean, come on, this Knicks team with Tom Thibodeau there, it's looking pretty good.
Say it with me, guys. Fools gold. That's what the numbers Julius Randle is putting up right now. And I'm not saying this is a shot to Julius Randle because I always kind of liked him on the Lakers just because he was so aggressive and he always played really hard. But 41% from three with his shot, I don't think that's very sustainable. But it is good to see the Knicks 4-3 and having a winning record. As much as we pooped on them in previous podcasts, Tom Thibodeau got them playing some good basketball.
The only concern is that Tom Thibodeau does not care about rest or minutes. We've seen that in the past. He's going to run you down, and he doesn't care. And that's going to be a problem long term if the Knicks are, battling for a playoff spot in the 8th seed.
Well, I
Yeah,
think
to your point, Brandon.
Oh, go ahead, Garrick.
No, I was just going to say I'm surprised he's even letting Obi Toppin and Emmanuel quickly get minutes. They are out there some nights. I thought they would have some DNPs the way he's run his teams in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was just going to say, this team's so young. Why not play RJ Barrett? What is he playing, like 40 minutes a game, just to see what you have in him and get him out there to develop, because that's really the face of your franchise at this point, him and Obi Toppin, Mitchell Robinson. So, just run those guys into the ground and see what you have in them.
Yeah. My next guy is LaMelo Ball for the Charlotte Hornets, right? He might get the start eventually soon because he's outplaying guys like Devontae Graham, right? That has been an issue, and he's not shooting it well. But I'm really impressed with how he's just been a playmaker right from the start. He's averaging nearly 2 steals per game, shooting one or making 1.6 3-pointers per game, and basically averaging nearly 5 rebounds and 5 assists per game. Just a high basketball IQ. And I've said it, I wasn't a fan of him coming into the draft. I thought we were going to have another Lonzo type of situation, but LaMelo Ball, his high basketball IQ is really what's impressed me in his first few games in the league.
Yeah, you said he wasn't shooting well, Brandon, but if you told me LaMelo Ball is shooting 35% from three, I would say I wouldn't believe you because this man's never really been that efficient of a player.
I'm impressed with that. It's more of the overall field goal percentage.
Yeah.
He's only shooting 39% there.
And I think coming into that, that's actually, for me, that's actually good to see because I thought it could have got ugly with LaMelo at certain points where it might have been in the 20s or something the way he was shooting in the preseason. But it's good to see him getting on track. And if he could keep up 35, 36, 37% from three, he gets a little stronger, he's going to be a problem as a lead playmaker for the Charlotte Hornets.
Two things. Something about the Lonzo Ball situation very quickly. He is very quietly having an all defensive type team, type impact on the Pelicans. He's having a really bad season if you just look at the stats.
That's what the Lonzo fans say when he starts shooting 25% from three again.
Those advanced
bring
stats,
up the
DRTG, those percentages. I mean, Drew Holiday has nothing on this guy right now. That's all I'm saying. But as far as LaMelo and how he goes, I'm happy to see it, obviously, because he was my pick, if you guys remember a few episodes back, just being the rookie of the year. And I think he could have a Michael Carter-Williams type year. And so far, he's doing that with a slightly better percentage from three. So that's nice to see. I think the only other guy in his way really is –
Did we just say a Michael Carter-Williams type rookie year?
Yeah, rookie of the year, yeah. Just because
this is why I love Garrick.
Efficient, right, and slinging.
Garrick has the best metaphors, the best NBA metaphors.
I'll take it on this one. It's one of my many talents, I like to think. But the last thing that I was – oh, go ahead, Brandon.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say the last thing I was thinking about, too, is just he seems to have really opened up the offense, kind of like how Brandon was saying, just with his passing, because – I know Terry's a great scorer, but sometimes they do need a little extra playmaking help, which has been great to see.
Yeah, great for LaMelo Ball. Again, has surprised me, and he's lived up to that pick. I'd like to see his shots that aren't 3-pointers to fall in as well. Thomas Bryant is my last guy that I want to mention that has been overperforming, nearly 18 points per game. Almost 7 rebounds, 1.7 assists, and 1 block per game. But that's not the most impressive part. It's the 66% field goal percentage and 50% three-point percentage on the season. Thomas Bryant is a guy on your fantasy team. If he's still on the waiver wire, a couple of weeks ago he was only owned probably 50% or a little less than that. So if he's still on there, you want to immediately grab this guy. He's been looking great with him and Russell Westbrook as a lob threat.
Yeah, he's been the lone bright spot in the Washington Wizards season so far. Because preseason, I was hyping this team up as a team that would get home court advantage, but it doesn't even look like they're really going to make the playoffs with the amount of talent they have. So that's fun.
Yeah, I have to apologize to all the fans out there. We thought the Lakers 3.0, because if you know, the Lakers got all the riches, the rich get richer. The Pelicans, they dropped them off. They got some of the scraps, but they still got some good morsels out of them. And then Isaac Bonga, Mo Wagner, and Jonathan Williams at the time, that's really the bottom of the barrel as far as who the Lakers had and they were willing to give up. So I'm sorry to Washington. Sorry to Rex up there. The GM isn't the best, but I don't know. I still can't not say that they're going to be good just because they have 2 top guards, just 2 super elite guards. So I can't write them off, but it's not looking good so far. That's what I will say.
Yeah. Well, before we move on to our NFL talk, I know we talked about some positives. If each of you or if anyone else wants to mention some players that have underperformed, who have just looked awful this season that you want to touch on real quickly.
I mean, this guy hasn't looked awful, and I don't even know if we could say he underperformed, but Zion, I'm looking at his stats right now. He's only averaging 20 points a game, which, I mean, but I think my expectations for him were like so high coming into this season with no limit restrictions. I think he can take it up to another level this season. I mean, I think he's gone off to a little bit of a slow start by his standards.
I'm the biggest Zion proponent on this podcast. I said it last time. He's top 12 until he himself, Zion Williamson, proves to me that he's not top 12. But I think him and Brandon Ingram, and Darren made a great point a few podcasts ago. It might have even been 10 or so episodes ago. But just the fact that they still kind of have this friction, it seems like, and they don't know who's the top guy. And then I remember Brandon brought up the fact that just last week, Brandon Ingram obviously won that Player of the Week award. So then in the sense, I think it's just hard to kind of gauge who's going to be the best player. And I think for a guy like Zion, who can just obviously attack the lane and is probably one of the 5 top guys you don't want to see on a fast break, he doesn't really have those people to pass out to, like we were talking about last week, because it's all D, no 3 basically with these guys. And I don't know how Van Gundy's going to change that. He's kind of an old school coach, but he doesn't really have the personnel at this point. So I'm just looking for more guys to start hitting threes, or I don't know. Maybe you got to make some
That's a
trades
great
down
point,
there in New
Garrett,
Orleans.
because as much of a beast as Zion is, he can only do so much when the paint's really clogged up from Steven Adams and Eric Bledsoe's guys helping off.
Top 3 in offensive rebounds, though, so we got that going for us, boys. I thought it'd be like that.
Eric Bledsoe, after starting off slow, back-to-back double-doubles for him. Looking positive there. Anybody else, guys, before we move on to the NFL?
2 positives really quickly. I did not realize Nikola Jokic was averaging 12 assists per game and is leading the NBA in assists right now. And I think he has like 11.7 rebounds. So he's actually averaging more assists than he is rebounds, which is insane. And I think he's dropping 27 points or so. And then Domantas Sabonis is just the beast also. And he's shooting 50% from 3 right now. And if that's the leap he's taking, I know that's not sustainable, but most improved player, him versus the field. I'll take him every time. 28-1, you said,
think
Brandon,
right now,
or
yeah.
Aaron last time. I'm taking him every single time. Arvydas Sabonis. I've said it once. I've said it again. The greatest what if in NBA history. I don't want to hear
I'm
it.
about to
That's
look
all I have
that
to
up on
say.
Bovada right now.
Give me the Bovada stats. I need them.
Well, guys, some 2 ESPN games. First, NBA Wednesday night game of the season. We got the Heat and the Celtics at 4:30, followed by the Clippers and the Warriors at 7:30. So I know we'll be
Those are
keeping
2
our
awesome
eyes
games.
glued on. Our eyes will be glued onto that, and we'll recap week 3 next week and talk about week 4 in the NBA season as well. But it's finally NFL playoff time. I know we've skipped it the past couple of weeks on our NFL talk, but we've made sure to make some time for football. And I think the biggest storyline of the week was the Washington football team versus the Philadelphia Eagles and Doug Peterson pulling out Jalen Hurts for the backup, Nate Sudfeld. And ultimately, a tie-breaking game could have taken place with the New York Giants and the Washington football team for that division. But once they took Jalen Hurts out, they pissed off a lot of Giants fans and a lot of people in the NFL for basically just giving that game away.
Yeah, I had a not so fun parlay of the Cowboys and the Eagles both winning that would have cashed, and the Cowboys would have made the playoffs. So it would have been like a double whammy for me. But neither of those teams won, and I lost all my money. So it wasn't a fun Sunday for Darren. And as for the Giants fans bitching about the Eagles losing, maybe win more than 6 games and then start talking, because you have no right to be complaining about not making the playoffs, only winning 6 games.
It would have been history if they could have done it. Shout out 7-9 in the Beastquake, but I'm not here for that right now. I think what they did is honestly disgraceful, and I'm kind of with everybody else. I'm not the biggest football head, but I know you don't take out the guy who's supposed to be the face of your team with the given circumstances just because Carson Wentz hasn't been what he kind of had been in the years of past, obviously with some Pro Bowl appearances. And Zach Ertz is upset. I don't blame him.
Because you guys don't like tanking. I'm pro tanking.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's a difference between tanking and, just giving up at the end, though. I think that's because a lot of athletes, I feel like that's it's not only disgraceful, but it's also kind of bad luck. Like, it's just disrespectful to the sport, right?
Well,
so it'd be one thing to be like, you roll out a bad lineup, but to take somebody out is really bad, I think.
Yeah, and to your point, Garrick, of having a longer leash on Jalen Hurts, I mean, this guy started, Carson Wentz for all those games he fumbled or threw interceptions, and Wentz had a longer leash there. And when the division is on the line, I know you said there, Darren, I totally get your point, win more games, but when this game that wasn't even supposed to be the Sunday night football game gets flexed into that and you give up on the national stage, I just think that's absolutely disgraceful, disrespectful to the game of football.
So what do you call the Steelers playing Mason Rudolph then in their last game and benching all their starters? I mean, that's basically the same thing. he just did it. It was premeditated before the game.
Isn't
Well,
the difference though? Like
Roethlisberger
everybody
actually
was
had
kind
it.
of set up.
Because the Browns needed to win, right, to get in, and they just benched all their guys. Is it bad just because Hurts started the game, and you bring in Sudfield, so it's like you're seeing the tank in real time? Because I think that's what's kind of the drawing part about it.
So I think there's a difference because it's like resting your guys, right? I think that's the main thing.
And I think the main thing too is the competitiveness. The Steelers didn't give up. They knew Ben Roethlisberger was coming off of that injury, right? And they wanted to rest him. They didn't want him to get injured in the last game. They were already in the playoffs, right? The Steelers were, and they fought down to the wire. And in this case, with the Eagles, they didn't.
I understand. You guys are just saying because the Steelers are already in the playoffs. I don't know, but if I'm a Philly fan, I'm like, woo, all right, we went from the 13th to the 6th pick. That's pretty damn good.
That is pretty good. Some great guys
It's a
available
big
there.
upgrade.
Maybe they can get a wide receiver like Devontae Smith, who just won the Heisman.
I hope, as a Cowboys fan, I hope not, because that just spelled trouble for us with our secondary.
Jamar
what I'm
Chase,
thinking, right?
possibly.
What I'm thinking right now, as we look at the draft situation, and make sure to go to Shooters Only Podcast now because we have the draft order there. You can comment on what your thoughts are and who's going to get picked. But I'm thinking, right, Jacksonville, you're taking Trevor Lawrence. Number 2, I think 3 quarterbacks could get off the board before that Philly pick. And if some D linemen, some cornerbacks, and O linemen go that way, and the Eagles could still potentially get Devontae Smith if those other teams don't take a quarterback or if some trades are made.
You're saying the Eagles could take a quarterback?
No, the Eagles could take Devontae Smith with just the amount of quarterbacks that are going to go back to back to back. Maybe
I'd agree with that because there's a team at number 3 that just drafted a quarterback last year, the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah.
Who, I mean, I was on the Tua bandwagon. I know Brandon was on the Tua bandwagon, but he did not play well this year.
Mm-hmm.
And do they possibly take Justin Fields or Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, one of those guys, and kind of bring him in as competition to Tua and see, like, you got to get the quarterback position right. So let's see if we can get our guy.
This could be a Josh Rosen type of deal.
Maybe. I'm not throwing out the window just because getting quarterback right is the most important thing in the NFL.
Darren, you set this up to a perfect transition. And I'm going to tell you a great team that they can trade with. And this is not just me being a 49ers fan, but on the BYU podcast, Zach Wilson was asked, what team do you want to go with? What scheme fits with you? And he said, I don't want to mention any names, but he did. And he said that he would like to be in Kyle Shanahan's offense because he believes that's his best fit. So I'm thinking here, right? If you trade with the Niners here, Dolphins get all they want. Niners take their quarterback with Zach Wilson at 3. They move to the 12 spot. A quarterback that can fall down there could possibly be Trask, Lance, or even Mac Jones, right?
Mac Jones.
So if you can get one of those quarterbacks there at 12, I think they're still confident in Tua, and you bring someone there that can back him up that has done great this season in college football, I think that could be a win-win for both teams.
And you saw the 18th pick that you kept, obviously, so you could do a lot there, honestly. If you want to trade down and you don't feel confident about who you're taking, the only guy who would stop me from that beautiful plot that you just laid out, though, Brandon, is this man, Sewell, the O-lineman. I think he looks like he could be the next great O-lineman. And I know that's really boring. You know, nobody wants to do that. But we saw how important that was in the situation with Andrew Luck, right? The guy who you want going forward. And, you know, eventually they brought in Quentin Nelson, but at that point it was already too late. And, you know, he was too battered from all those years of just getting hit by, I think, countless sacks years that just blew out previous records that were held for how much he would get hit. So I think there's a sense that maybe I just go safe, especially after moving off of Tunsil with the Texans there at that pick.
Eric showing love to the Fat Boys.
Yeah.
Love
this
it.
is throwing things. This is completely conspiracy theory, but I feel like within the next 2 years, I just feel like it's too early to waste that talent of Andrew Luck. I feel like he could come back. I know he was a smart man and he's different between all these other guys that retire and come back. For example, like Rob Gronkowski, because health was on his mind from the beginning. And if I don't know. I just think Andrew Luck just had too much talent.
I
And
like that the Andrew Luck returned.
he didn't really live up to that number one overall pick. So I don't know. Maybe this is just me being a Niners fan now and speculating. I think I give a call to Andrew Luck. I say, hey, come join this team.
Hey, Palo Alto, it's not that far from Santa Clara. That's where he played college. I don't hate it, Brandon. I don't hate it, especially in that Kyle Shanahan offense.
We'll get on to actual news that happened in Israel with the NFL last week. And again, we mentioned the Cleveland Browns beat the Pittsburgh Steelers 24-22. Sets up another matchup with them in the wild card playoffs. And the Browns' first time in the playoffs since 2002, and all three of us hit on it before the season started with the bright future Cleveland Browns. But their head coach now, Kevin Stefanski, not going to be there on the sideline because he contracted the vid.
Exactly. And I know we're going to get into our wild card preview a little later, but Pittsburgh's one of the teams I really like this weekend at -6. I think without Stefanski, this is going to be – it might get ugly. It might get ugly with that Pittsburgh defense and Baker kind of being out there by himself.
Yeah, I think Baker, obviously, this is the first time he's been in the playoffs. We've seen what it's done to other quarterbacks in that division. Shout out my guy Lamar, but, he's shied away from those big moments, and he's still young. So I know Baker has that ultimate confidence. That's one of the reasons he went first overall. But I don't know. He has the weapons, and he has the running game to really help him. But I think with that defense, like you said, Darren, it could be a really hard time for him. And we know – obviously, Big Ben has been there, done that, because he is a man who has 2 bowls. And even in his worst bowl, the defense carried him to get that. And it was arguably one of the worst Super Bowl performances of all time by a quarterback back in 2004, I believe. So he could still get it done again. They might carry him. They might not, but it's a team full of guys who can make plays.
If he plays like the Big Ben in that second half of the Colts game, the Steelers are Super Bowl contenders. I said it. Because that was the first time I've seen him actually start slinging the rock down the field. And that offense looked really explosive because those receivers, I think, are so good and they can get down the field. Ben just needs to get him the ball. So if he could just muster up 4 or 5 of those games for this playoff run, the Steelers will be dangerous.
Something really quick. Those TikToks are now coming after the games. That's great team bonding experience. They're ready to go into this week. That's all I'm saying. Juju and Claypool, man, I need to block you on that TikTok because those ladies are looking at you a little too hard for my liking right now.
All right, guys. I don't think we really need to recap Week 17. A lot of teams are already out of that playoff contention. Let's just jump into upcoming wild card weekend here. We got 3 games on Saturday here. The Colts and the Bills, 7 versus 2. Rams at the Seahawks, 6-3. 5-4. So the Bucks are going to be visiting the Washington football team. Then on Sunday, we have the number 5 seed taking on the 4 seed, Ravens at Titans. 7-2, the Bears at the Saints. And closing it out on Sunday Night Football again, the Browns at the Steelers. So let's jump back up to the first game on the slate. 10 a.m. start. Colts at Bills. Who do we have in this one?
This is the game I've hammered down. This is my pick of the week. I love the Colts in this game. -7 right now. The line keeps on going up for Buffalo. The Colts are playing with the no one believes in us energy, I think. This is where I'm going with this. The Bills, they're the team that's been hyped up as the biggest threat to the Kansas City Chiefs. Josh Allen getting all this MVP buzz. I think the Colts are playing with a chip on their shoulder. We know they can run the ball with Jonathan Taylor. The Bills have one of the worst rushing defenses in the NFL. And I'm just waiting on one of those Josh Allen, he does 5 stupid things and loses the games. He's due for that. Colts got a great defense. I think they control the ball the whole entire game and at least make it close or win.
Granted.
Derek. Yeah. All right.
I know. Oh, were you going to say something? Sorry.
No. Go for it. I want to hear this.
Okay, I was just gonna say, granted, we know that this defense, and I'm talking about the Patriots defense first and foremost, because I want to highlight this game. Bill Belichick, the greatest defensive mind, the Greg Popovich of the NFL, could not stop this man, Josh Allen. Whether or not I like him, this man was producing at an MVP caliber type level. In most of the years, he would have been really in that conversation. But obviously, we saw with Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers, they had great years themselves. But in that sense, you still got a lot of playmakers. You got Zach Moss, Stephon Diggs is top 3 in receiving yards. Cole Beasley is a guy who was constantly on the waiver wire who could get you 20 points in a fantasy week. And I know those don't sound like the biggest names, Cole Beasley especially, but those are guys who are going to do some damage. And that Bills defense is nothing to play around with either. They were marked as a top 5, defense by a lot of fantasy experts and a lot of ESPN analyst experts. And they were just saying that, these guys are going to be serious. They're going to be something you're going to have to deal with. And I don't know, man. I think that offense is just going to be too prominent for the Colts to possibly stop. And we've seen the past few weeks, they've been a little shakier than at least in the beginning week. So I think that could hurt them.
Perfect transition over to me. I agree with that point. I was going to lead that with that point, Garrick. The Colts defense wasn't as strong as how they started the first 8 games of the season, and Buffalo got hot at the right time. We saw them in that game that Stephon Diggs had 3 touchdowns, and it was an easy win for them also in the final week of the season. They're cruising through it. Buffalo Bills, the number 2 seed. I think this one is a lock. This is going to be my guaranteed pick. I think the Bills are going to take down the Colts fairly easily. I know you said Jonathan Taylor there in their rushing game, but in order for that to happen, they got to have the passing game going. And with Phillip Rivers there, I don't think that Phillip Rivers has it to lead them out with a win. They're going to have to do it on the ground, but he's got to establish that passing game. I think the Bills are just too much, and I got the Bills in this one too.
I'm cooking up a little teaser on Bovada right now. I only got $25 left in my account because I don't want to talk about it week 17. I already talked about it. That show was horrible. But all the Steelers got to do is win, and the Colts just have to lose by 13 points or less, and we're betting 25 to win 20. I love it.
That's Darren's pick on Bovada for the week for y'all. We'll move on to Rams at Seahawks. We saw these 2 teams square off against each other 2 weeks ago. And, Jared Goff, still not sure about this game. Sean McVay would not say who his starting quarterback is, but it should be a good one. The Rams offense seemed to click there in that victory over the Cardinals that knocked them out of the playoffs.
Yeah, divisional playoff games between divisional rivals are always kind of weird, and I think the Rams, whether it's Goff or Warford, they're gonna keep it close. I think that defense will keep them in the game. And like Seattle, I know they're 12-4, but after the hot start, Russell Wilson really kind of has been struggling. I think I saw they only scored 30 points once in the second half of the season, and that was against the New York Jets. So they really didn't score 30 points at all the rest of the season. And with that Rams defense, I kind of like a Rams upset for this game.
Wow.
I like it, honestly. I'm kind of torn up about this because, as a Niners fan, I'm supposed to kind of hate both these teams. But as somebody who's from LA and who's been preaching the Rams for a while now, maybe Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald can just bail out Jared Goff or whoever ends up starting, because it's not going to be Blake Bortles. God, let's hope it's not Blake Bortles. But
I'm kind of here for the Blake Bortles comeback.
I'm definitely not here for Blake Bortles in the playoffs. But I don't know. I think it's really going to be a tale of offense versus defense, right? We know DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, I think doesn't get enough credit for just how consistent he's been for the past few years. And you could probably even argue he's a top 15 to 20 receiver maybe. And he just always kind of seems like he's there. David Moore is still pretty solid. So in that sense, and you still have Carson in the backfield. So they have a lot going for them offensively, but the defense is just horrid since the Legion of Boom era left town. And I don't know. I know the playoffs, it's usually the defense that wins, but I think I'm going to have to ride the Russ wave, honestly, because I just think that offense even when he's not going, they can still get things done with all the playmakers they have on the field on that side of the ball. So I think I'm going to have to believe in him just because Jared Goff is too shaky for me to believe in, even though Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey are my guys and I love them. But yeah, I think I'm going to have to go Russ on this one.
Can't go wrong with betting on Russell Wilson.
Shout out Pete Carroll.
So Pete Carroll just said that Jamal Adams, they'll work him out throughout the week, and if he plays, it'll come on game day, so it'll be a game time decision. And from that injury last week to Jamal Adams, I don't know, if Jamal Adams isn't there, this is going to, I think, come down to the wire even closer again. And this is a hot take. And I think the offense looks better without Jared Goff. And I think you got to ride the wave. You got a running quarterback. He ran for more yards last week, led the team over Cam Akers. And if you're looking hot with the quarterback in the system you have, John Wolford, not too many people have heard of him, but in preseason last year, he showed his skills, right? He showed that he can run the ball, and that's always a threat. That's something that Jared Goff couldn't do. He would get sacked and just stay in the pocket, just like Jimmy Garoppolo. And with that take there,
Always the random shot to Jimmy Garoppolo.
Not the sub.
I love it, Brandon.
I'm going to have to take – I'm still going to take the Seahawks here. I know I went on that whole big tangent. I'm going to go with Russ in the playoffs. I'm not going to bet it against him. But I think this is just a 3-point win, and I'm not surprised if the Rams pull this out with Wolford. I think it's less than a 7-point win.
Yeah, it's not like Goff was throwing the ball that well either, so might as well get a guy that can run in there a little bit with Warford.
Exactly. And now we got the Bucks at the Washington football team to close out the Saturday slate. Tom Brady in the playoffs as a 5th seed going to Washington. You heard Chase Young said that he's ready for Tom Brady. We got Alex Smith there, Ron Rivera, one of the greatest stories of the season. Alex Smith is going to win Comeback Player of the Year, not by his performance, but by what he had to battle to come through on the season. And so we're going to preview this because of the Sunday game to start it off. It's the Ravens at the Titans. And I saw this on First Take, and I thought it was a great question, so I'm going to pose it to you all. Who has more pressure for their legacy now? Is it going to be Tom Brady taking on the Washington football team? That's a 7-win team that could potentially upset them with that defense. Or is it Lamar Jackson taking on the Titans who they lost to earlier in the season with a Derrick Henry overtime touchdown run? And because Lamar Jackson hasn't won a playoff game, being an MVP winner.
I think I got to go with Brady just because when I was looking at the games, this was the game I was least interested in just because I think Tampa's just so much of a better team than Washington. Like, I don't understand how Washington's going to be able to score any points on that Tampa defense when they probably should have lost to the Eagles last week if they don't pull Jalen Hurts, and they haven't scored over 20 points in their last, 4 games. So I just don't think that game's going to be very close, even if their defense is really awesome. So I think that'd just be kind of a big hit to Brady's legacy. Not a big hit, but it kind of be a stain on Brady's legacy.
I'm going to pull out some Machiavelli for you guys.
All right.
It's easier. If you're a leader, you rather be hated than loved. Because when you're loved, people can take that away at any time. People can pick and choose when they love you. Love outside of your family, hopefully your family should be unconditional. But, people pick and choose. They don't always love the leaders they have. And Tom Brady is somebody in the sports world who's been hated for a long time by a lot of people if you're outside of the Foxborough area. And I think for him, I think he's the last guy I want to see, obviously, in the playoffs, especially when you're talking about rekindling that relationship on the field with Gronkowski. You got AB back there now. Mike Evans, 6'5", can just make all these different types of plays, spectacular catches off the wazoo. And that's not even to mention Godwin. So I think that's extremely scary. And I know Lamar does have some weapons, obviously, one of the top 5 tight ends up there in Baltimore. But I think if he loses, right, there's just going to be a sense of, well, he is what he already told me he was. He has to overcome.
And I think the Titans are also a really good team. The Titans are a really good team, and I wouldn't be surprised if they beat them. They've already beat them this this year in the regular season. They beat them last year in the playoffs. I think the
And
Titans are just
Tannehill beat
a
Brady
very
last year.
they're a very formidable opponent that we should not be sleeping on. I mean, Derrick Henry 2,000 yards. If he has one
Yeah.
of just
I mean,
he could just take over a game.
All right, so we'll
is he
make
better at rushing than Lamar? Like possibly. So like I couldn't really get too mad at them.
we'll make two predictions here. So, are we taking Washington or Tampa Bay, and are we taking the Titans or the Ravens?
I'm gonna go chalk here, Tampa Bay. I'm gonna go Tampa Bay, and they're gonna win pretty easily. And I'm gonna go with Baltimore. I think they're one of the hottest teams going into the playoffs right now.
I think I'm gonna take the Ravens too, just because even though everything I just said, I do think is like pretty true. I think Lamar is obviously still the better quarterback, and his versatility on his feet is still. You can't really count on him letting you down like that too many more times, hopefully. So I'm not to shoot with Lamar, and then I don't know. Maybe it's just the Alex Smith love. After everything I just said, I don't want to bet against Tom Brady. I think this is extremely dumb. Don't do what I do. But I think Chase Young and Alex Smith, I think those guys won it. And they still got McLaurin, J.D. McKissick, shout out to him, maybe the best quarterback on that team. He's throwing deep balls down the field too. Maybe we bring that out with Ron Rivera. Riverboat Ron's bringing out the plays. So I'm going to go with Washington.
Yeah. Garrick, I love you for that, and I'm going to ride with you with that because Tom Brady, every single week, he's had a great game and a down game. We finally see him put up back-to-back great weeks to close out the season. But when it comes playoff time, this is his first time here in Tampa Bay in the playoffs. And with me riding the wave too, and just the love of the underdog. You mentioned Marshawn Lynch, 7-9 there in Seattle, taking them down. And this is a home game for the Washington football team. I'm going to take the Washington football team in this one as well. But for that Ravens and the Titans game, we saw a great matchup between the two earlier in the season, as I mentioned. And we saw last year Derrick Henry at the goal line in the playoffs throwing a pass Tim Tebow style with that jump pass. I'm not going to be surprised if we see that again, and just how great Derrick Henry has been. Also, Ryan Tannehill to A.J. Brown over in the season. I'm going to have to take the Tennessee Titans over the Baltimore Ravens. And two more games on the slate for the playoffs. We're going to go to the Bears taking on the New Orleans Saints. I'm just going to give my pick here. I'm going to take the Saints easily on this one. I think this game is similar to the Colts and Bills game in the AFC. Saints over Bears, easy.
Yeah, as much as I would love Maserati Mitch to just come out and upset the Saints in the first week of the wild card games, I mean, the Saints are just a better team in all phases of the ball, and it's going to be a pretty easy win for them, I think.
Do I hear Saints once, twice, or three times out here? Because, yeah, I think the Saints are going to win it. I think their defenses are comparable, obviously, because you got Khalil Mack and some playmakers for the Bears. But, yeah, I just think the Saints are going to be too hard to overcome, just with Marcus Williams, Cam Jordan, all those guys. And, you still got one of the best play callers out there in Sean Payton down in New Orleans. So I'm going to have to go
One thing
Saints
to look
too.
out for that game, though, no Alvin Kamara possibly, since he got COVID, I think, a couple of weeks ago. So that throws a little wrench in the
That's
Saints
huge.
offense, I think.
Yeah, that's definitely huge.
Yep,
But still, it's Mitch Trubisky, so
Yep.
I got to go with New Orleans.
It's the sweep for us here. Last game, Sunday Night Football. Browns at Steelers. I'm riding the wave. I'm riding the bright future Browns. I'm taking them here right now. Baker Mayfield, even without Stefanski, I think Stefanski is not the guy that's the make or break the game. All right, you've had the game plan there all season long. You just got to execute it. And sure, people are going to say, "Oh, he's Baker Mayfield's going to look to him on that sideline." But I think Mayfield's going to come confident here. You still have Nick Chubb. You have Jarvis Landry. You've been doing it all this season, and you close out the season on a hot start. I'm going to take the Browns on this one.
I'm going to swerve away from you, Brandon. I think knows Kevin Stefanski. You're missing an all-pro right guard. I'm really worried about the Browns this game. I think it might be a bloodbath and it might be over really quickly just because their team, if they get behind, they can't really run the ball anymore. It's going to be a struggle for Baker to move the ball against this Pittsburgh defense. And I think just if the COVID stuff didn't happen to them, I think I might choose the Browns just because if it's a fun story, but right now it's not looking good for them. So I think the Steelers win by double digits in this one.
I wouldn't be as bold to say double digits, but I'm not really as bold as Darren or Brandon most of the time. Kind of scared to make those bold predictions myself, but I think I'm going to have to ride the wave. I just said that they would make the playoffs. I never said they had to win. So I think Baker, unfortunately, I think he's going to take an L. And yeah, I just think the Steelers are going to be a lot to overcome.
Well, that's our NFL Week 1 wild card playoff predictions. And if you haven't been following football this year, you may be wondering why there's an extra game in each conference. Well, we added that extra playoff spot, and the 1 seeds, the Chiefs and the Packers, both getting Week 1 byes. So we'll see which teams will take them on next week. And thanks for tuning in to the first episode of Season 2 of the Shooters Only podcast. I cannot stress enough to follow us on Shooters Only Podcast on Instagram, delivering some great content every single day, every single week. Again, big things for this show in 2021. We're trying to get a YouTube channel, trying to make this a live show. And also our podcasts are going to be a lot better. We're going to have some more new sound effects on here, new intros. So make sure you check that out. And as we close out every single week, we're going to keep that tradition in Season 2. Your bold prediction or hot take for the week.
My bold prediction. I'm going to bandwagon on onto my Colts Bills take. Jonathan Taylor going to rush for over 180 yards against the Buffalo Bills, 2 touchdowns. And we're going to be talking about him next year in fantasy as a top 3 pick in the first round.
Damn. Let me see. The Hawks play the Hornets tonight. You know, no defense is getting played at the guard positions.
No one's watching that game.
Trey Young is going for 40 tonight. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay, I like that. Tonight, I'm just going to go for it. Draymond triple-double, first of the season.
Woo! I love it. I'm definitely tuning into that Clippers-Warriors game. That's a must-watch game for me.
Well,
it's going to be a good one.
Wait, did you mean to say single, Brandon, or did you say double on purpose?
No, I said double on purpose. He's going to get 10 points. Exactly 10 points.
Damn, son. I can respect it.
Well, thanks for tuning in to this episode. For Darren Jung and Garrett Garcia, I'm Brandon Cadiz.
Hope you enjoyed this episode of the Shooters Only Pod.
And stick with more to come down the line.
Make sure to subscribe and follow on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.